Hello, everybody, and welcome in live to the 44th edition of Texas Longhorns football. We really appreciate you guys for joining us on this Monday. Like we say, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time since 7 p.m. Central Time, or Gerald's time. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below and also join us for our live show every Monday. Now, let's jump into this. Felix Ojo did release his top 8. This was a little bit ago, but hey, it's the offseason. We got to fill time to talk about this. I think it's important. I think you guys care too. So let's talk about this. In his top 8, Ole Miss, Texas, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida, which kind of surprised me out of these 8 teams, Georgia, and then honestly, Oklahoma kind of surprised me too, but they do produce NFL talent, especially along the offensive line. So, Gerald, what do you think of that top 8, and who do you think are Texas's steepest or biggest competitors?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you look at like who got the visits, right? That kind of narrows it down a bit. But I really think like the big two probably for Ojo to me feel like Oklahoma and Texas are the last two that are getting visits. Any kids in state, those are probably going to be the top two that you're looking at. You know, Bill Bedenbaugh has kind of was a little bit behind the times, I think, if you talk to OU folks. And so they're starting to catch up and they realize that like if we don't modernize this recruiting operation, then it's just not going to work for us on the offensive line. And so I think we're seeing some of that now with them being in Ojo's top 8. You know, they've been competitive for a couple of other guys. And so I think, you know, as it stands right now, like the ones that really make sense to me, probably Michigan, Texas, and Oklahoma, just based on how they produce offensive linemen they're putting into the league. You know, Texas really has jumped to the forefront of that in the last few years, especially this cycle. They're going to probably put 3 guys into the draft at the very least. So, you know, Kyle Flood continues to boost the brand there. Can't also overlook the Pancake Factory, Texas' ability to just inject some NIL straight into the veins of it. So I really like Oklahoma and Michigan feel like probably the top 2 for me in this race. Oklahoma gets the last visit, so that's always something, at least the last visit in the summer. Texas gets the week before. Texas has a lot of committed players coming in on the 20th and a lot of uncommitted players coming on the 13th. So we'll see how they balance that out. I would prefer to get the last visit, but that's just my own preference. But again, I think Texas and Oklahoma are probably with Michigan running third.
No, I would agree with that. And I think it's a combination, like you laid out, of NIL and also development. And if you look at that, Michigan right now is killing it in the NIL game. Also, check out the Michigan channel. They've been talking about that. They do a really good job over there. And they've just upped that level to where they're in that first tier of probably NIL now in college football. And obviously that's going to matter. Yeah. And then on top of that, you also develop really well, which has been a staple of Michigan. Even when they had bad football teams, they always had a decent offensive line. So I think that's important. And then obviously Oklahoma, like you said, we may not like them, but Bill Bedenbaugh's a really, really good offensive line coach. We've seen that over the years. He's been able to develop talent. Their issue is the NIL game. They've kind of gotten late into this picture. And also, I think there's kind of desperation now on their part, because if this doesn't go well for Brent Venables, you're probably going to have to not hire a new coach. 1. 2, they aren't like, if they realize, hey, if we get passed up here, we may never get it back by certain teams. So I think that's very important as well. So they're definitely going to be in it. I would say an outsider for me is probably Notre Dame. I mean, I think they play the NIL game pretty well. They also produce at a very high level, and they're winning. I think that's something you have to consider as well. But anyone else would kind of surprise me. Ole Miss, I'm honestly saying he just kind of threw that one in there. He probably has a decent relationship with Lane Kiffin, but that was kind of a weird one as well to me.
They do throw bags, though. Ole Miss does throw bags.
That is very true. They definitely do. Florida honestly throws bags as well. I don't know the last time Florida really developed like a high-level offensive lineman. I think that's been a minute. They're mostly known for like playmakers on the outside and defensive linemen, I would say. Offensive lineman is not one of those things. And hey, Texas wasn't really up there as well until recently. So I understand that. But this is definitely a guy you have to get. We've talked about, Gerald. This is probably going to be a light defensive line class and a heavy offensive line class. This is going to be a 2022 offensive line type class. And Felix Ojo is going to be a very important part of that, because John Turntine is the guy. You have to land that guy. He's like the highest rated offensive lineman, and he's from the state of Texas. So you got to land that guy. But Felix Ojo is right there. He's really climbed up. I think the last time we talked about him, he was like a high 4-star recruit. on 247 right now, his composite ranking is a 5-star recruit and 25th best player nationally. So he's risen quite a bit, and I could see him like go even higher because this guy's a 6'6", 275-pound guy, and he's a really good athlete.
Well, like 247's like actual ratings has him as number 7
Yeah.
overall. So you're thinking like Kelvin Banks level of production from this kid. And again, Kelvin Banks is a class in and of himself, right? Comes on campus first year, gets it done, right? But like that's the level, that's like the pinnacle of what somebody who's a top 10 player at an offensive lineman can and should be. And so, yeah, I think this really creates a situation where he is a must-land kid. He's from Mansfield, right, in the state. Again, those in-state guys, those OU always has their claws in, but I think with how Texas has been recruiting, how Texas has been developing, again, the sales pitch for Felix Ojo is you walk into his living room and you put on Kelvin Banks highlight reel, and then you put on Kelvin Banks grabbing a jersey on night 1 of the NFL draft, right? That's the recruiting pitch for him, right? In 3 years, you can be a first round pick if you come to Texas and you play your cards right. Now, there obviously OU has all the skins on the wall in the past, and Michigan does, and all these other schools do, but like Texas is the one that's doing it probably best right now, especially for this class. Again, we've talked about it before. 3-4 years ago, Texas went without a draft pick, and now they're looking at a streak of first round picks. They're looking at a streak of potentially top 10, top 15 type picks this year. So like there's an opportunity for Texas to have potentially 3 guys drafted in the first round, which would be nuts. It's something we haven't seen in a very long time. And so that to me is like the recruiting pitch for a kid like Ojo. It's like, hey, Kelvin Banks came here. He was ready when he got here. We put him on the field first thing. He would probably have been a first round pick last year if he was able to go out. And so you could be that in 3 years from now. If you come in, get your head right, get your body right, and work right, like that's the recruiting pitch. And so I think Texas and Kyle Flood are in a advantageous position this specific cycle to really load up on offensive linemen.
No, 100%. And that's the thing too. It's stacking up. This isn't a one-off type class. Like Christian Jones got drafted last year. He played for the Cardinals a little bit this year. Then you're going to have Kelvin Banks. You're going to have Cam Williams also get drafted probably inside the top 50. And then, like you said, you'll probably have Hayden Connor or Jake Majors, one of the two, get drafted. Maybe both. Someone could fall in love with an interview and say, hey, 6th, 7th round pick, let's draft this guy. So it's really impressive what they've done at the offensive line position. This is just another guy that could come in and honestly could play right away, because if Trevor Gooseby has a really good year, like honestly, if he just plays to the level I saw him and then take it up, I don't know, 5%, I think he could even be like a 2nd round pick next year. So if that happens, that left tackle spot is wide open. And hey, Felix Ojo, they gave the opportunity to Kelvin Banks. If you could be near as good as he was, you may have the opportunity to start right away at Texas.
And that is a lofty expectation for somebody, right? Coming to be Kelvin Banks, like that. Those are really big shoes to fill, literally and metaphorically. But again, if you want to play at the big boys, right? Because that's the expectation. If you go to OU, if you go to Georgia, if you go to Michigan, any of these schools, Florida, right? They want you to come in and be the guy. And so if you can come in and be the guy, and if he can't come in and be the guy, right, he's still in a position to develop for a year at Texas, learn from Kyle Flood, get your body right, get your nutrition right, get your feet right, adjust to the speed of the game, and then step in after Trevor Gooseby goes pro or whatever, or Brandon Baker on the other side, whoever it might be, right? There's an opportunity to develop, because you see a guy like DJ Campbell, who's a 5-star, who has a longer development curve and still quite isn't there yet. But Texas has the bodies in that offensive line room to say, hey, if you can come in and be Kelvin Banks, we'll put you on the field. But if you can't come in and be Kelvin Banks, you have space. We're not going to press you into service early. You don't have to be the guy. If you can be the guy, more power to you, but you don't have to be the guy. That's probably another advantage Texas has in this recruitment.
No, 100%. And I think it's just more of the opportunity. Like some schools, like no matter what, even if you're really good as a freshman on the offensive or defensive line, they're going to be like, nah, you're going to sit a year or play very little. Texas was willing. Hey, you're really good. You're going to play right away. They did that with Cole Hudson as well. So we'll see what happens there, but that's it on Felix Ojo. Let's move on to our next topic, which is the top 5 freshmen incoming to Texas. I think there's a lot of good guys, and we're going to talk a little bit about how good Sark has been recruiting in a little bit. Let's hit on this. So let's start with number 5. Who is your 5th freshman you're most excited for, either long-term, short-term, however you want to slice it and dice it? Who's your number 5?
Yeah, I think in this one, Kalik Lockett is probably one. I think I'm really, and this doesn't indicate how excited I am to have him as a recruit. I also took like instant impact into my rankings here.
Yeah.
And so I think Khalid Lockett probably has a longer path to get to the field than the rest of the guys that I have on this list. But I think Khalid Lockett is a guy who's going to come in and in probably 2 years be one of, if not the top receivers in the SEC, if not in the country. He's just got that level of talent. He's got that level of ability. He is a freak of nature. One of those guys that can just come in, and he might very well break the depth chart next year. I'm not saying he won't, but I think with the number of bodies in that room and the lack of aggression Texas showed in the portal, I think they're good with the guys that they have. And so him coming in, there's just a little bit of longer path to the field, I think. But I think he's going to come in and at some point be incredible.
No, I agree. Like I said, I'm already on board. I think he was the best wide receiver in the class coming out last year. Yes, that includes Ja'Cory on board. I have put that out there into the ether. I hope I'm right about that. He's a just long, lengthy, athletic guy that so far the intel coming out is all three of those wide receivers, Dalen McCutcheon, Jamie French, and him, have done exactly what the staff expect them to do. They did pretty damn good so far. Number 5, and this is also one I put my stamp on. I think long-term Smith-Orogbo is a guy that I think will be the best defensive player in this class. I really believe that. It's just the frame and athleticism that he has. He is a raw football player. I think he's only been playing for like 3 or 4 years, if I'm correct on that. And I just think he's going to be able to learn so much in this program. I think he's going to be able to put on the right amount of weight in this program. And I think the measurables you really can't teach. I agree. I think Lance Jackson, the guy that everyone talks about, I think he was a 5-star at the end of the cycle.
Yeah.
He's a guy right away that's going to play more than Smith-Orogbo. There's no doubt about that. I'm talking about at the end of the career for both of those guys. I think Smith-Orogbo is going to be a better football player. I'm really impressed with the tape. I really like the potential that he has. So he is my number 5.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I love the guys who like they haven't been playing football for very long, but they're also really good, because that just shows you the like development trajectory that they're going to be on, right? That's honestly Christian Jones, right? Christian Jones was not an early football player. He was a soccer player, and then like, you're massive, let's put you on the football field. And so I think that's why it took him a little while to get there. But that to me, Smith-Orogbo is a guy who I'm excited to see what he grows into, because he's absolutely going to be a monster. And I think, like you said, Lance Jackson came on campus and already looks the part, has also the reps in the trenches. He's a camp warrior, that kind of guy. But so I think when Smith catches up with him, I think he's going to absolutely be a monster.
No, 100%. So my number 4, I struggled with this one, but I'm going to go with Michael Terry. I think this is long-term and short-term. I think short-term, they're going to, ease him in and not use him as a Swiss Army knife. Like I think he's going to be used eventually, but I think you're going to see him probably as a tight end or wide receiver right away, and then just expand his role to an H-back, a tight end or wide receiver, a little bit of each, depending on the formations, the defense being played and all that. But I think this guy has a very high ceiling. I mean, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. He's a super good athlete. I think ran like a 11-second 100-meter in high school. So that for that size, that's really fast. Yeah. And I think he can be an explosive tight end. I'm really hoping he beefs up a little bit, and that's where we use him. But wherever we use him, I think he's going to be a very good football player. So he's my number 4.
Yeah, and that 11-second 100 was as a sophomore, right? So like he's grown a little bit, got a little faster since then. No, I think you're absolutely right. He's one of those guys. He's going to end up being like a big Silas Bolden. I think he's just going to play all over the field. Maybe not as fast as Silas Bolden or not as shifty, but he's going to be a guy who you can play anywhere on the field, anywhere on the offense, and he's going to be a value add for them. I think you're absolutely right. He was probably like 5B on my list, like right on the outside of my list, because. And then he's a guy who I think in a couple of years is going to be all over the world. So my number 4, I have Myron Charles. I think Myron Charles is a dude. I think Myron Charles is a guy who especially with, again, where Texas is at in the defensive line, in the interior defensive line, I think Myron Charles is a guy who's already got the size, like 6'5", 290 coming in as a freshman, like a big kid, already kind of a mauler, just a big bear kind of a kid that you need. And that's what really does well in this defensive system. Texas has been blessed in the last several years with big playmaking defensive tackles with interior guys who, again, you think about the last 2 years, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, you think about Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat. Those guys are big, like playmaking defensive tackles, but really in this system, this is a system that's designed for your defensive tackles just be anvils in the middle. Just grab somebody, take up some space, throw the numbers off, and create some plays for the guys on the outside and the guys at the second level. And I think Myron Charles has the ability to do that. He's a big physical guy. He's thick. Like, I like him on the offensive line. He's a guy who can occupy multiple space, occupy two gaps. I just love it. I think he's going to be an impact player sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think just based off his skill set, and also we're a little thin at the defensive line, especially the interior right now. I definitely think he plays a little bit. I think you're going to see probably Alex January only got like 5% of the snaps. I think you're going to see Myron Charles more at like the 10 to 15% range, and I think he's going to play well. And into the future, I think he's going to be a really good player. Who's your number 3?
My number 3, Bo Barnes, Elijah Bo Barnes. I think he's another guy who, based upon like positional value, made this list for me because the linebacker room has a really high ceiling. But like after that first level, after Anthony Hill, after the Le'Veon, like who's there? And I think Bo Barnes, honestly, in a year with even more depth in that room, would probably be a guy who cracked the rotation anyways. But because of the thinness at linebacker, I think he's a guy who's got a really good skill set. He's athletic. He's a really violent linebacker, which I love to see. He's a guy who just likes to get in there and mix it up. He's not going to be very good on passing downs. I think he's probably going to see the sideline on a third down, a third and long, a third and medium. But on a third and short, on a first down when they're running it, he's a guy who's going to get in there and mix it up, put his nose in a run fit, and really blow things up. So I think he's a guy who can have an instant impact and also has a really high ceiling.
No, I agree. He almost made my list. Yeah, it's just a position where we really need someone to step up eventually because, like you said, this is it for Anthony Hill. And speaking of Anthony Hill, we appreciate this comment by 512 Outdoors. Anthony Hill about to eat dudes this year. Yes, I think Anthony Hill's probably going to win the Buckus Award. He should have been a finalist last year. I thought that was ridiculous, but it is what it is. But yeah, and we're going to need someone to step up. And I think Elijah Barnes can definitely do that. I agree with you. He'll get some early playing time. Needs to beef up a little bit. And then also, like you said, needs to get a little bit better in the passing game. But other than that, he's going to be a really good player. Number 3 is for me. And the top 3 are all studs to me. Jonah Williams. I just think this guy is going to be used perfectly in this system. I think you're going to see him line up at safety. I think you're going to see him line up at linebacker on certain downs. I think you're going to see him line up at nickel. He can do it all. He's a freak athlete. As you know, he plays on the baseball team. So to be able to play 2 college sports, you have to be a very, very good athlete. And I think he's just perfect for this Pete Kwiatkowski system.
Yeah.
Do I expect him to do all those roles next year? No. Again, it's a lot like Michael Terry. I think you ease him in. He's going to specify in one role this year, but then at the end of his career, you're going to see him line up all over the damn field. And I think he's going to have a phenomenal career at Texas.
Yeah, and I actually have him on my list at number 2. So, like, spoilers for my next section. Yeah, I think Jonah Williams is a guy who comes in and can have instant impact. He is. I talk a lot about like playing freshmen, and there are guys that you like have to play, and then there are guys that you get to play. And he's a guy that you get to play, right? He can play anywhere. He can jump in at safety, either side. He could probably even play some of the nickel in this scheme just based on his athleticism. I don't think he's going to need to, but Texas has the opportunity. He's a guy you can play pretty much anywhere in that secondary, and he's a positive player. He's a plus player. So I have him at number 2 on my list because he's just a dude. There's no 2 ways around it.
100%. And number 2 for me, I already talked about him a little bit. I have to put him up here, Khalil Lockett. I think he's going to be the best, like I said, best wide receiver in the class. I think he's going to play a lot early at Texas. We made a video early on in the offseason talking about who's going to be that number 3 wide receiver. I think it's going to be this guy. I really believe that. I think he's going to have a Ryan Wingo type freshman season, if not a little bit more. I think he's a special football player once he gets a football in his hands. And again, it's kind of weird because we talk about contact balance as a running back thing. I see that with him when he catches the football, high points it, and then lands and is able to run after. That's a very rare trait. Most guys, when they catch it up like that, high up in the air, they fall down, they're down, which is fine. You caught the football. This guy's able to high point a football at the high at his peak and then come down, land, and outrun people. So I think he's a really special football player. So he's number 2 for me. And then number 1, let's see if we have the same one. Justice Terry.
100%. Yeah.
Justice Terry. Okay. I'll let you hit on him.
I mean, all the things I said about Myron Charles, but times 2, right? Like Texas needs bodies of defensive tackle, and Justice Terry is just a special kind of player. He's big, he's fast, he's way quicker than somebody who's 6'5", 295, 300 pounds, should be good feet, good active hands, like everything you want out of like a third-year defensive tackle, he's got coming in at Texas. Texas needs the help. There's a reason why they went heavy with that. They got 2 guys that I think were top 100 players in this freshman class, and they'll be able and ready to play. And I think Again, Justice Terry is a mauler. He's a monster, and he's going to create matchups that are favorable for the linebackers, right? He's the kind of player, I mentioned it already, but he's the kind of player who can occupy multiple gaps, right? If you're going to run to the A gap, you're going to run into Justice Terry on either side of that center, right? So like he's the guy who creates the freedom for Anthony Hill to be Anthony Hill and for Leon Galefau to be Leon Galefau and make those run fits, right? That's the kind of player that you want. He's one of those ones that I wouldn't be shocked if he comes in, plays really well early, and is gone in 3 years because he's just that type of athlete.
No, I agree. I think he's a 3-year player here. I don't think we get his 4th year unless like he gets a devastating injury, which I hope doesn't happen. He's just a spectacular, like, I think it's funny. There's a picture. Anyone can look it up on Google. I think he's 15 or 16 years old, and he already looks like he's ready as a freshman in college to play football. And he's just a freak in every, like facet of the game.
Yeah.
And we need him. Like, he's going to play early just because, one, we need him. Two, he's really good. And I expect kind of like you're not going to get the sack numbers because he's playing on the interior, but I expect like a Colin Simmons type freshman year from Justice Terry on the interior, which is just a dominating football player when he's on the field. And you'll probably see a lull like we saw with Colin Simmons. Started out fast, a little 1 or 2 game lull to get used to like SEC type play. And then once that ended, he was really good again at the end of the year. He was our best pass rusher in the Ohio State game. Like, they could not block him. I kind of expect that with Justice Terry. I think early on, people are going to be like, damn, he's really good. Then SEC play starts, and probably the Ohio State game too, since we start out with that. He'll probably not make that much of an impact because, again, that's a really hard game as a freshman to play. But I expect middle of SEC play, I think you're going to see an all-conference type player, honestly, because that's kind of what you saw from Colin Simmons.
And I think you may end up seeing, like, early in his career, it may not be the fill up the stat sheet kind of impact, but the I always hate this term, but like the ball knowers, right? When you watch somebody playing on the interior defensive line, like, you know, the guy, like Devondre Sweat didn't show up much on the stat sheet, but he was the reason why the defense was so good, right? He and Byron Murphy did not show up a ton on the stat sheets in every game, but they were the reason why the linebackers were really good, right? So like that's the kind of impact that I think a guy like him can have early and often for Texas. So that's why he's number 1 on both of our lists, because dude is just special.
100%. That does it for the top 5 freshmen. Before we get to the next topic, let's talk about how you can be a part of the Voice of College Football Network. That is one of the sponsors here, Win Agency. They are with the Michigan channel. And again, guys, get your business, product, service, or personal brand to the next level by partnering with the Voice of College Football. Let's discuss how you can also reach your target market. Check out the experience of one of our current partners, like I said, the Win Agency. They think we've done a phenomenal job. Maybe we can do a phenomenal job for you as well. Check us out at sponsorships@vocfb.com today. Email right there. Check us out. You can sponsor one of the channels. It can benefit both of us. We really appreciate it, guys. Also, check out the new Instagram, guys, which just dropped. That obviously is going to be doing very well during the season. So check it out right now. Be a part of it from the very beginning. We really appreciate you guys doing that there. Just type in the Voice of College Football on Instagram. You will find it. And like I said, give us a follow. Check out what we've put up there lately. And then last but not least, please check us out on your favorite audio platform. Type in the Voice of College Football. You can find it very easily. You can listen to whatever show you desire. It is all on there. Iowa, Michigan, USC, Texas. We really appreciate you guys doing that for sure as well. And then let's talk about this. How good is Steve Sarkisian at recruiting? So we went back, looked at the last couple of recruiting classes since his time here at Texas, and I just wanted to jump in and basically have a discussion about how well you think he's done at recruiting. Do you expect it to continue? And let's start with the 22 class. So what did you think of that? And honestly, when I went back and looked at it, Gerald, my first thoughts were this wasn't as good as I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, you have 16 of the 28 guys transferred out, which is a big number. And I think we'll see a little bit of a trend in this where like the top end of these classes, they hit on really, really well, but that like middle of the group isn't necessarily as developed. But like that 22 class, like Kelvin Banks, DJ Campbell, Jaden Blue was in that class. Like it was a good class. And I think for me, like the biggest impact of the 22 class was like just the signal of what Texas was going to be about, right? Like half of those 28 kids were in the trenches, right? And that was like the shifting the philosophy of how Texas approached football in the past. And so, there is room for improvement. Obviously, you don't want nearly half of your kids or more than half of your kids to transfer out of the class, but that's also just part of what college football is nowadays, right? Like the guys are going to transfer 3 years in because they want to find the place where they can land. But again, I think specifically offensive line, Sark continues, and through by virtue of Kyle Flood, I think had a lot of success in that 22 class, and I think we're going to see that trend kind of continue.
No, I agree. It's funny because, other than the offensive line, I think this class was kind of a bust. The names I put down there, like Brennan Thompson, obviously transfer out. We had really high expectations for him. Jamon Tapp, again, a guy that I think we had a little bit more expectations for. And then Justice Finkley, great teammate, great person, but he just did not hit anywhere near of what we thought he was going to hit. He was a high 4-star recruit, and he's going to play at Kansas, probably start there next year, but he just wasn't what I thought he was going to be. But I will say this, coming in here, Texas was bad in the trenches for years, and this class changed that. So to me, this class is like, it's over a C. I would consider it like a B type class because they hit exactly where they needed to hit. You got Kelvin Banks, you got Cam Williams, you got Cole Hudson, you got those guys in the class. They've been able to produce. And I don't think any of the offensive linemen from that class have transferred out, which is crazy to think about, that you've been able to hold on to all of them. And Neto's been here since then, and he's barely played. So very impressive. He got exactly what we needed. And I think that's the story of the Steve Sarkisian era. Whenever he needed a recruit, he got it. Whenever you needed that recruit to develop, to take Texas to that next level, they got it. So overall, I think it's a good class. Now, it is as good as I remembered it being. No, it wasn't. When I went back and looked at the list, I was actually kind of surprised.
Yeah, it was, I think it was one of those classes that built momentum for the program. Like, that transitional class was okay. And then they got into that first full class. And that's really when I think people started to buy into Sark. And so like the impact of the players on the field, I think we talked about, obviously, the offensive line is probably where the biggest impact from that class was as far as on the field, but creating momentum, creating the vibes and the aura for, to steal a word from the kids right around Texas, in that like transitional era, because they were coming off a 5-7 season when that happened. Right. So like being able to land that level of class coming off of one of the worst seasons in recent memory, which is weird to say because, again, Texas had been pretty bad in recent memory. Having a losing season, landing I think it was a top 5, top 10 class, and being able to create some of the buzz, like, oh, people are bought into what Sark is doing. People are bought into what Texas is doing. The arrow was pointing in the right direction in spite of the on-field results. And so I think that more than anything is why I would grade that class a little higher, right? Give it a B, because the simple fact that like that was really where Texas is now started.
Yeah, 100%. Let's jump over to the 23 class. Better. I think this class actually has a chance to be like kind of a generational class because you have Arch Manning and Anthony Hill in it. That's a pretty damn good combo of 1 and 2. The biggest miss for me was Jonte Cook. Obviously, we know what's happened to him. He's still not on any team, I don't think, at this point. So that was definitely the biggest miss, but he didn't really miss, I will say, talent-wise, because we know Jonte Cook is very talented. It's more of a head thing with him. But overall, what did you think when looking back on this class?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the same as what I said for 22. I think the top end of this class is really impactful and will continue to be really impactful. That like middle to bottom middle of the class, you see most of the guys that have transferred out already. I think 6 of them come from that like the middle chunk of the class, those like mid 4 stars, a couple of 3 stars in there. But then you also have those moments where like they hit on a guy like Quintravian Wisner in the portal, who was a 3-star, who, he's not a guy that you would normally bring in that class, right? Because you have CJ Baxter at the top end of that class. So you bring in Trey Wisner, who got passed up on the depth chart in high school, and they still hung on to him. They kept him around, and he turned out to be a solid player for them. And so I think, again, you have guys on the top end like Anthony Hill. The jury is still technically out for Arch Manning, right? But Arch Manning, CJ Baxter, you have Leon Galefau in that class, Malik Muhammad, Derek Williams has been a player for Texas as well. And he, despite the injuries, he's a guy who can contribute. So I think this class, if we gave 22 a B, this is probably like a B plus class in my book. Verging on, if Arch lives up to the archness, then I think we'll be able to bump that letter grade up to an A.
No, I agree. And I think another name that you said that I was going to hit on as well is Malik Muhammad. I think if he lives up to that recruiting level too, we could be talking about this as like an all-time class at Texas, because then you have, like, let's say Malik Muhammad lives up to that finally. We're talking about first or second round corner, first or second round first round linebacker and Anthony Hill, and then a first top 10 overall pick in Arch Manning. That's a really, really damn good class. So, I mean, and like you said, I think if you look at most recruiting classes, look at the top 10 players, I feel like they did a better job of hitting on the top 10 players in this class than they did the 22. 22 was like half and half. They hit on half of them. They didn't hit on the other half. I feel like this is more like a 70% hit rate out of the 23 class so far, and it could get even higher. We'll see. For the 24 class, it's too early, but anytime you get someone like Colin Simmons, who I think is probably going to be a top 10 pick whenever he decides to come out in the NFL draft, I would say it's a damn good class.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we talk about like those must get guys in the state. Texas used to not get them. And now in back to back classes, right? 23, Anthony Hill was a must get guy for Texas in state. The state of Texas doesn't put out linebackers like that routinely. So he was a must get. And then in 24, Colin Simmons was a must get guy for Texas, in state kid, elite level kind of guy. And they landed him and he came in and lived up to the billing. And so I think, Ryan Wingo's a guy who came in and played for them early, right? Brandon Baker's got, obviously they didn't need him on the offensive line, but he's a guy who probably could have played. Xavier Filsamy is a guy who could have played, right? Jared Gibson was a guy who got some snaps, right? This is a group that I think came in and has an opportunity to be really, really good. Again, I'm a little worried about like the bottom half of the class. We haven't heard a ton, especially about the wide receivers. I think most of them have already gotten recruited over in that group. So I'm curious to see what happens with like Freddie DeBose, Parker Livingston, that group of folks. But again, I think the top 10, top 15 of these guys in this class have a really good opportunity to be elite and get you to like that A status.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird because Tom Herman got a bunch of 3-star guys that occasionally would play like a way above their heads and then get drafted in the NFL and play really well. Where Steve Sarkisian is taking these 4 and 5-star guys and he's developing them extremely well, but he's yet to develop those like 3-star guys into stars yet. Whereas like Trey Weiser's really the only one I can think of that's like, damn, that guy's a really good football player. That was like a lower level recruit. That just may be a talent that Tom Herman had that Steve Sarkisian didn't. I would rather have Steve Sarkisian's thing because that's how you win national championships. You don't really win national championships by raising the floor of a 3-star. You raise it by bringing up this to the ceiling of the 4 and 5-star guys. So that's fine. And then we'll talk about the 25 class, but I think this has the chance to be the best class that Steve Sarkisian has had. And obviously they ranked the number 1 class. So that shouldn't be any surprise there. But Jonah Williams, Justice Terry, Khalil Lockett, we just talked about a lot of them. I think this could be a very, very special group. And literally all around, like you have Cade Phillips at cornerback. You have Jonah Williams at safety. You have Khalil Lockett at wide receiver. You have KJ Lacey. Maybe he pops off and does a really good job at quarterback. You never know. This could be like a generational type class.
Yeah, and I think KJ Lacey is a guy who I think gets unfairly looked over because Diabell is in the next class, right? But KJ Lacey was a dude, and there's a reason why Auburn and Alabama both offered him and we're on him, right? So like let's not overlook KJ Lacey. I really appreciate you shouting him out there because I think he's a guy who Texas fans unjustly overlook because we have him the next shiny thing. But yeah, I mean Lance Jackson's guy who's going to come in, and I think he's probably an early contributor. Justice Terry, Bo Barnes. We already talked about some of these guys. Myron Charles. Like this is a group that I think can come in and they come in a year where Texas. It's not rebuilding, but like they're reloading. And so they're a part of that. I think they have an opportunity to jump in and be immediately impactful. And so I think you'll see some of these 25 guys get earlier opportunities than some of the 23 and 24 kids did, just simply because of timing, right? Timing is everything in life. And so them coming in at this spot, if they can jump up and catch a coach's eye, this could be a really impactful class really early.
No, 100%. I think honestly, the 23 class is what it is because of Arch. Like if you transferred Arch to the 24-25 class, it'd be really, really special. I think the 24 and 25 class is more well-rounded in the type of football players that we've gotten. So I think Steve Sarkisian has just gotten better every year at recruiting at Texas, which makes sense. You're winning. You're getting the recruiting better. Number 1. Number 2, you're also, I feel like he's learning more because he hasn't been a head coach that long, learning more what he likes and how to develop and how to do well. So that makes perfect sense as well. But I think it's really exciting times for Texas, and I think it'll be a really good job for Steve Sarkisian going forward recruiting wise. NIL obviously helps that as well. But I mean, Sark's doing it at a level Texas hasn't seen, honestly, since the heyday of the Mac Brown era.
Yeah, and I think sorry about that. My
You're
3-year-old
fine.
wanted to
You're
join the
fine.
live stream. But yeah, I think Sark comes in at a really advantageous time because he hits at the NIL era. Texas is ready to get back to its winning ways, right? I think the boosters were all very ready to move on from what had been happening, right? So it's easy to get them aligned, right? It's really easy to get them aligned about a guy who, like Steve Sarkisian, has NFL experience, has experience, running one of the most optimized offenses in college football history, right? He comes in at the perfect time. The boosters are aligned. Chris Del Conte is aligned behind him. And so you're able to get this level of momentum, right? They're able to create that and take advantage of that. On top of that, right? Because we've said it before and I'll say it again, all of the guys that Texas recruits are going to get paid wherever they go to, right? So it's not just the NIL advantages, but Sark built a staff that one can connect with the players really, really well, but also has the ability to develop them really, really well. Because that, with these high level kids, you go to Florida, you go to Georgia, you go to Ole Miss, you're gonna get paid, right? They all play in the SEC. You're all the NIL budget is going to be there for most of these schools that are recruiting these elite kids, but being able to say, hey, you're going to get paid in college, you'll get your $500,000 or whatever for being an elite offensive lineman, but Kyle Flood's going to turn you into a first round pick and get you in the NFL draft, right? So that's the differentiator, I think, for Texas, how they've built this recruiting machine.
No, 100%. I think the last thing is just winning that national championship. They've hit on everything else. That's literally the last thing. That's going to take the longest, but if you keep at it, it's going to happen. So we talked about recruiting. Let's talk about this. How good is Sark in the portal? This one I had a better grasp on because I do remember some guys early on that we did not hit on at all that were kind of brought in that had high expectations and just, didn't develop at all, or honestly, were never going to develop wherever they went. So the 22 class, you hit on the guy that honestly transformed the program, Quinn Ewers. So that's very important. And Ryan Watts also was a very good football player at Texas. Probably played the wrong position. I think he was probably a safety playing cornerback, but that is what it is. He was good while he was here. But then after that, it just Isaiah Nayer, I think, would have been a special player at Texas. I mean, the guy just ran a 4.4 at the combine with 2 ACL surgeries, and he's 6'3", 220 pounds. That guy's going to be good in the NFL. I'm pretty confident in that if he stays healthy. But then after that, Jai Hall, super high expectations. Let's not even talk about it. I think he transferred like 4 schools in like 1 or 2 years or something like that. Jaleel Billingsley did not hit at all, had high expectations for him. Diamante Tucker Dorsey was okay. I didn't really have high expectations for him, so that's fine. And then Tariq Milton from Iowa State, I did have a big catch, I believe, in 1 or 2 games. So I'll give him that, but really didn't do much. What do you think of that class overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think the average is floated by the Quinn Ewers of it all. I think, having Quinn Ewers in that class covers a lot of the sins in there. Tariq Milton had a couple of big catches. Diamante Tucker Dorsey, I think, ended up having to play more than Texas, than even he probably anticipated. You get a kid from JMU who's coming up effectively like a level in college football. You don't expect them to play a ton, and so he had some opportunities to come in due to injuries and stuff. And Isaiah Nayer, I think if Nayer's knee holds up, then I think we're having a very different conversation about the 22 class, and especially Steve Sarkisian's ability to recruit at wide receiver in the portal, because we're talking about that with the next 2 classes. I think that is Texas has done a good job of targeting the areas that they feel weak at and really having a good set of names that they have relationships with to get folks in. So that 2022 class, it's hard to not rate it highly because Quinn Ewers is the crown jewel of that group and really, again, got Texas to the back status that it's at now.
No, 100%. And the 22 recruiting class and the 22 portal class played well. You got your offensive line, and then you got the offensive line to protect the quarterback you just brought in. So overall, I think both those played very well off each other. And like you said, if Quinn Ewers isn't in this class, it's probably like a D class, but it raised it to like a B because of how important he was. The 23 class was a lot better. We got a really good punter in Ryan Sanborn. You have A.D. Mitchell, who stayed healthy at Texas. That was his big issue at Georgia because he was really good on the field at Georgia. He was really good on the field at Texas. Gavin Holmes, who played very well and got better on his time here at Texas. Jalen Catalon, again, health. That guy's a good football player. The problem is he wants to kill everyone he hits, so he ends up hurting himself. And then Trill Carter was honestly probably should have played more. I think he's actually a decent defensive lineman and played a lot at Auburn. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think that class feels like a 5 for 5, maybe a 4.5 for 5, just based upon how Catalan's time in Austin ended. Kind of him getting injured, him getting frustrated, checking out early, maybe a little bit. So I think like early in the season, Catalan was a guy who I was glad that we got him back in Austin. That was a group that I think, again, we saw it. Texas looked at the areas that they were like, we need some help there. They targeted specific guys in the portal, landed specific guys in the portal. Texas got a big assist from AD Mitchell having a kid in the state of Texas. I'm never going to like, I feel like his daughter should get free tuition whenever she's of age. So in 16, 17 years from now, his daughter should get free tuition, because without AD Mitchell, Texas doesn't win the Big 12. Texas doesn't make it to the college football playoff, right? Like that big catch against TCU always is going to be on the highlight reels of Texas being able to get the job done in the last year in the Big 12. And so I think the story of, if 22 is like putting Texas on the trajectory, 23 is like getting Texas to the level where they want to be at.
No, 100%. And what my mind goes to, if Isaiah Nayer's healthy and we still get AD Mitchell, imagine a trio of Isaiah Nayer, AD Mitchell, and Xavier Worthy. That would have been insane. We would have loved to see it. Next class, 24 class, which is a very good transfer portal class. They hit on a bunch of these guys, especially lower level guys like Lole and Norton played very well to what the expectations were. Obviously, Andrew Makuba came in with high expectations, and I think even overplayed that. Like, he was very good at Texas. And I think, honestly, if we're taking like 5 guys Texas is going to miss, I think Andrew Makuba is in the top 3 of that, because he was so damn good on the defense at roaming around, making plays happen, punishing people when they came downhill, a la Gunnar Stockton in the SEC championship game. And then you land Bond and Golden, obviously a guy that was kind of an afterthought. Not for me, because I said, again, on this channel, he was my favorite guy coming over wide receiver wise in the portal. And he's proven that he's going to be a top 25 pick in the NFL draft. And then you have Trey Moore, who's still there. And then obviously Silas Bolden make a big play in the Red River game. So what do you think about this class?
Yeah, I think if you look at and I want to pause and like I manifested Andrew Makuba coming to Texas. You can go talk to some of my friends over at BON. Like I put it in our group chat at the end of 2 seasons ago. I was like, hey, if there's one guy that I want Texas to go out and steal from the portal, it's this kid. And he went to the portal like 2 days later, and Texas landed him. That was one of those ones that really killed me, that ended up like in the Austin area leaving. So I'm glad that he got to come back and really rewrite that story for him. But yeah, I think that class, and the guys that hit for Texas in that group are so good that you forget about guys like Kendrick Blackshire, who didn't even make it through the spring, right? Or Javion Cole, or like Velton Gardner. They signed him like middle of the season. He never like even suited up, I think, because a weird injury he came to campus with. But that, like Andrew Makuba, like you mentioned, Lole, Bill Norton is a guy who I think was a huge differentiator for Texas. Obviously, Matthew Golden, Silas Bolden is a guy I wish they got involved earlier and more often, because I think we saw the impact that a guy like him can have. Sark does so well with those Swiss Army knife kind of guys. And so I'm just shocked that they didn't get him more involved early. This to me is like an AA plus class. Texas hit where they needed to, and even on like they hit so well in the spots that they needed to that you forget that there were some misses in that group.
No, 100%. That's what I was thinking too. Like, we need an edge guy. We got Trey Moore, was a really good player. We needed a safety, got Andrew Makuba, really good player. So exactly right. We hit in the exact same places we needed to hit. Kendrick Blackshire really wasn't a must hit. Like, he was going to be like the 3rd or 4th linebacker at best anyway, so that didn't really matter. And then this class, small class, but we'll see what they do. Hero Canoe, Travis Shaw, Brad Spence, Cole Brevard, and Jack Baumeister. I think it's going to be a good class. I think you're going to start to see transfer portal classes meaning less and less, because I think teams have realized, hey, why don't we just keep our best players and prevent them from getting in the transfer portal? You're not going to have guys like an Isaiah Bond transfer from Alabama and Andrew Makuba transfer from Clemson unless they really want to go back home for whatever reason that is, like an AD Mitchell for his daughter. That completely makes sense. But if it's a money thing, I don't think you're going to see that anymore, but we'll see what happens going forward in the portal.
Yeah, and I think you will see I think guys are going to transfer earlier before they have more tape, and so there's going to be a fewer certain things in the portal, right? They're going to be, like you said, less guys like AD Mitchell who have been proven commodities. We're going to see guys like I think of Micah Hudson, right, transferring from Texas Tech, guys like that who were high profile guys a year ago. Oh, it didn't pan out early for me. I'm going to transfer. So you're going to see those will be your big names in the portal moving forward. I still think you're going to see fewer guys that raise the ceiling and more guys that raise the floor. For me, you're going to see guys, and Texas is in a unique position where they can, one, bring these guys in and pay them, but two, if you come to Texas as a middling kind of tier guy and you put yourself on for a little bit, you are drastically raising your NFL draft profile, right? The high visibility. I think of a guy, the perfect example is a guy like Calvin Anderson from a few years ago. This was pre-transfer portal, like came to Texas as a grad transfer, wanted to show that he could do it on a major level, and ended up signing with the Denver Broncos, right? He was a guy who came to Texas. So you'll see, I think, more stories like that in these classes. I think you may have one or two of them in this group of transfers in 2025. I think that's going to be more of your transfer portal mode going forward early and often.
100%. I also think Sark has learned from past mistakes, looking at his recruiting and also his portal classes, of not taking guys that, hey, you know what? They have a really high upside, but they may not have the highest character. I think we've kind of seen that in the 24-25 class for recruiting and portal wise. They don't really take guys like that anymore, like a Jai Hall or anything like that. Those were guys you kind of had to take chances on because the depth was very thin at certain positions. He's not willing to do that anymore, which I 100% agree with. I don't think there's any need to do that. But overall, I think Sark is, like I said, both recruiting and portal, we've gotten better over time, and I expect the best going forward.
Yeah, and I think, early in Sark's tenure, and honestly, this is the Sark story at Texas, right? A guy like a Jai Hall was a high risk, low reward, or a high reward, low risk kind of guy, because you didn't, like, if he comes in and hits, it's great. You're not building your entire roster around him, and that's kind of how Texas did with Sark, right? You come in, you get him on a discount early, and then you pay them what they're worth on the back end. I think that again is what you're going to see Texas do in the portal.
No, that's true. That does it for How Good is Sark in the portal. Again, guys, if you want to join us as a sponsor, right there, we have the sponsor with the WIT agency, and they do a great job. So please check that out. They have a great relationship with TJ over there and John. So please check them out. If you want your business, product, service, or personal brand to get to the next level, partner with the voice of college football. Let's discuss how you can also reach your target market. Check out the experience of one of our current partners and email us at sponsorships@vocfb.com today. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Also, check out the Instagram, which we are trying to build. We'll get that up and running for the season. We already have it up and running, but a little bit more involved, obviously, as the season goes. You have more posts. But please jump in there at the ground floor. It really helps us build our brand at the Voice of College Football. We really appreciate that. Just Voice of College Football on Instagram. And again, guys, if you don't want to watch and you'd rather listen, let's say you're at your work or a long car drive. I know the summer's coming up, so you're going to be going on trips. You can just catch us on your favorite audio platform. Type in the Voice of College Football. You can find Texas, USC, Iowa, whatever it is, whatever it may be, you can listen to us there on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon. We really appreciate you guys doing that. And let's get to our last topic of the day, the Jalen Lott recruitment. So Jalen Lott, obviously the son of James Lott, cornerback for Texas from 83 to 85. This guy is the 66th player nationally, according to 247 Composite. He is the number 4 athlete. And we're talking about a guy as a junior that ran 10.900 meters, high jump 6'8". So a really damn good athlete. And a guy, again, he's listed as an athlete. Some schools have him at cornerback. Some schools have him at wide receiver. Texas seems to be playing more of the cornerback route. What do you like about Jalen Lott, Gerald?
Well, first of all, I want to pause. His mother was on some pretty good Texas women's basketball teams too. I think they went to the Elite Eight, and I think a Final Four team as well with Faye on the roster as well. So I want to shout out Faye Lott. I don't remember what her maiden name was, but yeah, she was an athlete at the University of Texas as well. So double legacy there. So Texas has to hit on him. Yeah, I mean, you can tell by who's recruiting him that Texas sees him as a corner, right? You got Orphe and Akina as his recruiting duo. So like he's Texas sees him on the defensive side of the ball. And I think from his skill set, his size, his abilities, I think that's probably one, the better upside to him, and two, the quicker path to the field. Because Texas, again, has recruited really, really well in that wide receiver room. And so getting him, he's a 6-foot kid that I think, again, ran a pretty fast 100. I think he's a explosive athlete too. I think he's a long jumper, a triple jumper. So Texas sees him as a playmaking cornerback A guy who can probably play either side, both field or boundary. He's a guy who has a high upside, a high athletic IQ. Go watch his tape. He's just all over the stinking field on both sides of the ball. Quick first step again, and he feels like a must have for Texas. One, by virtue of the fact that like both of his parents were athletes at the University of Texas, so like it sucks to miss on legacy kids like that. But also, again, he's a guy who I think can come in and be an early contributor, be a guy who, under a couple of years of Orphe and Dwayne Aquina, be an elite corner in the SEC.
No, 100%. And I think it's like you said, Aquina and Orphe, it did suck because Terry Joseph was his primary recruiter, moved on, but then apparently they jumped on very quickly. So that's good. And Dwayne Aquina was also, I guess, recruiting him at Arizona. So there was already a prior relationship. Yeah. But I think it's very important to hit on these legacy guys and also not take them for granted. I think some schools might be like, oh, they're legacy. We don't have to put 100% effort into it. That is not the case. Steve Sarkisian is recruiting Jalen Lott to Texas, like personally. He has talked to him. They've called a bunch. So that is a very important and good thing. You see, hopefully you're seeing that with Caden Finley as well, who again is also a legacy guy. It's very important to hit on them because again, maybe we get another legacy. Those guys have kids in the future, and then their kids come to Texas, so that helps as well. But we have big players in this. I mean, you're going to have USC visiting. He's visiting Oregon the week after Texas, which sucks. Again, in high school recruiting, you want the last visit period. I'm sure that's the summer, so he will have more visits in the future. Hopefully, we can get that final visit, because again, that is the most important thing in high school recruiting. I think Ohio State has been talked about, Georgia has been talked about, and different schools have them as different things. So this is kind of like similar to the Michael Terry thing. Michael Terry was being recruited to Nebraska at wide receiver, whereas Texas is like more of everything. And it's, does he want to go play wide receiver, or does he want to be a little bit of everything? And I think that's very important. He chose to come to Texas, which means he's open to do a little bit of everything. If Jalen Lott wants to be a wide receiver, then he probably won't end up at Texas unless Texas is willing to cave in and say, hey, you can play wide receiver. Right now, I believe Ohio State has him as a wide receiver, and then also Oregon and LSU also see him as a wide receiver. So that's important as well. Like, wherever he wants to play, and I guess it is very open. That's what everyone has been saying. He doesn't really have his mind narrowed down on that, but that could be a very big deciding factor as well. Is, hey, I may not really want to go here, but they're offering me wide receiver, and I really, really want to play wide receiver, so he may go there for wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think, the way you see somebody in their position, like, you can't really do much about it. If you think they're a corner and you think their highest upside is at a corner, then that's how you recruit them, and let the chips fall as they may. But I think, you mentioned Texas prioritizing the legacy players, and I want to hit on that for just a second, because it's not just like that they're legacy, but one of the biggest advantages that Texas has is that you can have NFL legends walking around the facility, right? Somebody comes to visit, and Michael Huff just happens to be there. Oh, Aaron Ross just happens to be around, right? Oh, and his wife, Sonia Richards Ross, who's an Olympic gold medalist, also happens to be walking around. Oh, Jaden Finley brings Jermichael with him, right? I think about volleyball recruiting, where they had Jermaine O'Neal on campus for years with Asia, and then he was able to talk to Big Swagoo over from ESPN, and now his daughter is on the volleyball team, right? So Texas being able to have that group of parents on campus that are also high-level elite athletes that talk about it, right? I guarantee you that James Lott and Cooper Manning are having conversations, right? I guarantee you that's the kind of guys that they're pairing them with when they come up. So there's so many advantages to really prioritizing that and creating this look of a unified Texas.
No, 100%. And right now, guys, it is Oregon and Texas. That seems like a theme that's been going on the last couple of years. Yeah. We've won some battles. They've won some battles. And, they took the Corian Moore last year, which is going to take a while for some Texas fans to get over. Hopefully we can win this battle with Jalen Lott. And I expect this, honestly, this will probably be wrapped up probably at the beginning of the season. My expectation is sometime in late August or September for him to commit. So hopefully he is a Texas Longhorn by then. Again, it would really hurt if we lose a legacy. That's always going to hurt a little bit more there. So hopefully we can get him. And I think he's going to be a very, very good player. He's a freak athlete. Like, they don't really make guys like that at the cornerback position very often. And especially a guy that is open to playing corner. Like, that's what surprises me too, is like, he's 50-50 on this right now. Whereas most guys, when I hear they're an athlete, they want to play on the offensive side of the ball. They don't really want to deal with the defensive side of the ball. So it would be awesome to get him there at cornerback.
Yeah, and again, glad that he's open to it. Glad that he's hearing and understanding of it. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for Texas. And again, this is one that we it feels like every recruit is a must get, but I think especially when you're looking at legacy guy, the stuff that Jalen brings to the table, like this is one that if they can't land this one, I'll be very frustrated.
Yeah, him and Caden Finley would definitely be frustrating to lose. I definitely think they're in the top 7 or 8 for me of guys you kind of have to land in this class.
Yeah.
And especially since it's already seems like we have a little bit of a lead, so we have to kind of have something to do with us messing it up at the end of the day, which is kind of unacceptable, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Stuff does happen. That does it for this segment, guys, in this show. We really appreciate you guys being here. This has been the 44th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. So please check us out every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, rain or shine, off season, in season, does not matter. We are here for you guys. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Also, check us out. Right there is my Twitter. You can check me out right there talking about sports all the time. I really appreciate that. And there's Gerald's Twitter and Blue Sky, along with his Longhorn pod, which he does with his college roommate. I always say roommate. It's college friend, not roommate, not roommate.
It's all good.
I always mess it up. But there we go. Please check that out as well on any audio platform, just like us, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. We really appreciate you guys checking that out. And this has been the 44th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. Thank you guys for watching, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.